Hi, everyone.
En zijn dat al studenten? Of,
Yeah, so now I'm accepting some students and okay, now I'm starting now. Hi, everyone. We started FADA Talks as a platform to meet with designers and their thoughts on design philosophy, education, and industry at the Faculty of Art, Design and Architecture at MEF University. And today, we are very happy to have Petra Blaisse and Aura Melis as our speakers. It's my pleasure to introduce them to you before their talk. Petra Blaisse started her career in 1978 at the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam in the Department of Applied Arts. 1986 onwards, she worked as a freelancer exhibition designer and won distinctions for her installations of architectural works. Gradually, her focus shifted to use of textiles, light and finish its interior space, and at the same time to the design of gardens and landscapes. In 1991, she founded Inside Outside. The studio worked in a multitude of creative areas, including textile, landscape, and exhibition design. Inside Outside works internationally on projects of increasing technical sophistication, ambition, and scale. Blaisse has lectured and taught extensively in Europe, Asia, and the United States. Her work has been included in numerous design and architecture exhibits internationally. In 2000, a solo exhibition on inside-outside work was organized at the storefront for art and architecture in Soho, New York. Aura Melis was born in Venezuela and studied architecture at the Technical University of Delft and the Faculty of Architecture and Urbanism in Sao Paulo. During her studies in Delft, she did research for publications on Dutch landscapes and was the editor of 2 editions of the Architecture Annual Book for her faculty. In 2003, she started her career as an independent architect with projects bridging urbanism, architecture, and design. Highlights include the design of the slow globe lamp for Druk Design with Next Architects, a publication on highway designs for Atelier Rijksbouwmeester, and several master plans for Amsterdam North in collaboration with Stithout as architects. In 2005, Aura joined Inside Outside as a lead designer on landscape projects and master plans all over the world. In 2011, Aura restarted as an independent architect collaborating with UN Studio, Bentham and Correville, Ruby, Van Den, Munkhoff, and Remenwisch, amongst other on complex interior projects of big office buildings. She also designed and built several private houses together with Barent Koolhaas, focusing on the relation between the interior and its surrounding landscape. Aura is also teaching in the Interior Architecture Department of the Royal Academy of Art in The Hague. Besides teaching, she organized exhibitions and excursions together with the Academy's international body of students and become part of the department's think tank. In 2014, Inside Outside and Aura started collaborating on an architecture project in Berlin. The possibility of making architectural interventions as a part of the repertoire of the office becoming promising new challenge to both Inside Outside and Aura, eventually leading to Aura's partnership in 2016. We are delighted to have Petra and Aura in FADA Talks among us today. Now I'm letting the thing to you. So, yes.
How many students are listening to or looking at our presentation, you think?
Now from here, we are 50, and both academicians and students are here, but I don't know about the YouTube. I think nearly 20, 30.
So 50 here and 30 on YouTube. Yeah, just to have an idea.
Just to have an idea, yes. Because we see only 3 people, so I'm not sure. Is it for 3 or is it for?
It's 53.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, so
You can start. Yeah.
yeah, you can
Okay,
start,
so
sure.
you see the screen, right?
Yeah, it's perfect now. The connection is also good.
Okay, so we're a design and architecture studio for interiors, exhibitions, and landscape, as you already told. And we are based in Amsterdam, and we just moved 2 years ago to this new place. And our team is partly stable and partly people come and go. Of course, that's a normal thing. So we are now 3 partners. You met Aura, is sitting beside me, but there's also Jana, who is a landscape architect. So the 3 of us are actually leading the studio. And Peter Nisse is very long a collaborator, and Napsika from Greece, and people from everywhere, Poland, Italy, etc. So we all have different different um, specialisms. We are writers, designers, music makers. Some people are also actors besides the job here, etc. So we are also inspiring one another, not only because we are different cultures and with different backgrounds, but also with different interests. As you might know, we are interested in working with architecture and in different scales, and very much interested in the relationship between inside and outside. This was a curtain that flopped out of our window at a certain point, but it symbolizes, I think, our interest and our discovery of what a textile and a curtain can do. And so much of our work is about looking at screens, different levels of transparency, and how you experience the interior from the outside, looking in or looking towards a building, and how you experience the outside world from within a building. So about viewpoints, about fluidity, about movement, trajectories, and sensations. So that is what we became specialized in, how you can, in different climates all over the world, whether cold or very hot or very, intensely different in winter and summer, how you can connect the architecture and the city, and, well, if there is nature outside the city to one another, or how they can at least be in some way in a kind of connection. So it's not only about a building and the outside of a building, but it's also about the kind of larger landscapes around cities and how these could enter the city and become a part of the city as a kind of so-called wilderness, as a memory for people living in very urban conditions about nature and about relaxation, smells, and seasonal change, etc. So through the years, we had a lot of projects with different architects in which we studied these relationships and how we could help create the communication or the connection between the two. And and some of our sketches are like this for Seattle Library, in the Central Library in Seattle, where we had both commissioned for the landscape and the interior. And then you can really, use a language that continues from outside inside. And using planting and textiles as almost one medium or equal medium. So it's about screening. Of course, this is all very classical, how you, like in theater or in landscapes and architecture, how you create illusion of spaces, or how you can, with flexible means, make divisions between spaces. And although you have divisions, still connections to other spaces, etc. And that is a sheer endless research and endless tryouts that through the years goes on and on. And of course, in the market, new materials appear. We need to follow what is going on
Alo,
being produced.
Alo,
ne yapıyorsun?
Would you like to ask a question? I'm hearing some voices. Would somebody like to say something in between? Okay, so our work is about discovering what certain materials can do, what their character is, how we can manipulate existing materials like cutting, printing, knitting, knotting, adding, layering, opening up. So it's a bit like in architecture where you need to get to know your materials and how they behave after a certain manipulation. Our interest is also in breaking open spaces or influencing views that normally are not there in galleries or working with architects from the beginning of a concept of a building, giving advice or co-designing how daylight can come in, how here a canteen in Chicago can of the university can just flow into an inner garden, and how, for instance, a parking lot concrete floor can be broken open and a roof to a plaza be broken open, so that in fact you don't have a very dark underworld, but that you have something that has air and that at the same time has a function of identifying a place, but also creating a division, in this case, between two kinds of parking lots, private and public, and also adding trees and life to a very harsh and urban plaza. Light, daylight, how you can use it to create transparencies, unexpected transparencies, also create illusion of space behind where there not necessarily is any space. Shading devices that not only shade, but also have, a story to tell. Here in Madrid, where actually there is a fantastic nature all around Madrid, where birds, migrating birds rest. We symbolize them as a form of shading. And because of the sun, the forms, the shapes of these birds are also traveling in the interior. So opening up buildings and sites and views, but also in our curtains, for instance, kind of effects that are unexpected and ever changing because of the sun or light changes. Of course, curtains create spaces and fence off spaces, and the ever going on search for material combinations, and for instance, the use of reflection. So not only transparencies and openings, but reflections. What is the effect? How can you enlarge your world or create connections through these reflections? And this is again Seattle, where the nature enters in and where we created these carpets. They are project carpets. They're very sturdy and you can clean them. They're anti-static. They have, of course, a very acoustic effect on the space, but also an effect on finding a place in a very large open area, and also as a kind of wayfinder following the carpets into the building and through the building, where actually the colors become warmer and warmer as you go in. Reflections creating also this total fluidity between interior and exterior. Here we had a commission in Rotterdam to redesign for 6 months a museum house called Sonneveld House in Rotterdam. It's owned by the Architecture Institute. And this is how the museum house is presented to the public. You can enter it. The whole house looks as if people still live there. It's a house built in the 30s. And we said, okay, we want to react to the architecture. That's what our work is about in the first place. So not adding objects or designs, but just kind of exaggerating the mentality of the architects of het nieuwe bouwen, which is light, air, and space.
Yeah.
Licht, lucht en ruimte. Yeah, light, air, and space. And so by opening up the windows and by taking out everything on the floor and replacing it by mirror, you create this kind of expansion or an exaggeration of this whole mentality, which was very new and modern in the 30s, of this light, air, and space. So here, daylight flows in and reflects the architecture and also gives away all the secrets of each object, which was actually interesting to discover. So it's meticulously done. It goes under every object, even the heater and the toilet and the bath. Everywhere we put these, it's actually PVC.
Yeah, it's a plastic material.
It's a plastic
layer.
Plates with a polished metal foil on top, and on a wooden floor, and so it's also deforming the objects a bit. So reflection can do a lot and can add a lot. This is the first curtain I made for the dance theater in The Hague in 1986. 86, 87. And then you also see that reflection is important, but also the movement. So curtains are not only made because they're soft or flexible or interesting to look at, they also are absolutely about movement in themselves. What I think is important also for your profession is the manipulation of light. So sometimes you have to really exaggerate or manipulate daylight, how it comes into a space and creates a very lively, ever-changing environment because of shadows and because of the time, you know, that it starts in the morning and of course it gets darker and darker, and because of the weather that influences your life inside and the whole experience of the interior. And of course, light can also be projected and create images on a space. Then these flexible screens or walls create their own spaces. So what I call the emancipation of architecture. They don't follow the architecture necessarily, but they create their own architecture in a way, and they can have a lot of different roles to play. Like here in the Kunsthau, which is a project from the early 90s, where I made a curtain that actually rolls up as a kind of tree trunk or evening dress. And then when you unroll it, it creates an auditorium. And it's also, these little rounds are speakers, so it's also a sound curtain. So the high tones, somebody gives a lecture or there is some performance, come out of the curtain that is enveloping the public. And these spaces can be all different from inside and outside, and they have their own acoustic quality and spatial quality. And sometimes they are very transparent and playful, or very chic in a bank in London, for instance. And an important tool going along with this flexible screens, curtains, drapes, or whatever you call it, is, of course, the track. The track system, which in the Kunsthau, what I just showed you, was really integrated in the ceiling. When the roof was made of that building, the track was literally poured into the concrete with the concrete. Here it's put later on, as you can see. But of course, the track choreographs the movement and the shape of a curtain, but also at the same time, the movement of the people around it. So here you see again a track system, all made to size, all specifically actually invented for a certain site, and sometimes integrated and sometimes not. But already if you see a track or like this in the Venice Biennale in 2012, it suggests something. It suggests an effect or a coming scenario, even without adding the curtain. And this is a little film which shows in the Biennale in Venice a little part of the movement of the curtain that we made there. This curtain was actually moving in the space of the Rietveld Pavilion. Rietveld Pavilion, which is also very modern in the sense of everything is square and everything is a multiplication of size. This curtain changed the space 12 times, creating different forms. So the track and the curtain create worlds and backgrounds and trajectories in themselves, as also the paths in a landscape, which is of course a very old knowledge that in every culture, the path creates this experience of a garden or a landscape. It brings you up or down, it brings you through a certain condition, and in walking that condition, you have different experiences and views, both visual experiences, acoustic, smells, etc. So we use the path in our projects, and that whether it's interior or not, the trajectory is very important. How people that inhabit your space or your design, how they move through that space and how they go from one experience or room to the next. And that is in landscape as important as in the interior. So these trajectories can be very businesslike or straight, very romantic or very absurd or very necessary. If you go up a mountain, you need to zigzag, but sometimes it's also a kind of fantasy that you want to exaggerate a movement. Or it can be very efficient and bring you from A to B in a straight line, like here in the park of Milan, a 10-hectare public park that we designed, and that has been opened in late 2018. The paths actually bring you from one important point to the next, and therefore they are the connectors for all the areas around the park, from a station to your work, from your home to the shops, etc. But you can also go left or right, so you have a choice of making it as complex as you wish, but you can also use it as an effective connector. Here in Kowloon, where it's also, and here, for instance, it's a very romantic path that you don't need to follow. You can walk everywhere, but the path is more a storyteller and a connector, in the sense that the path meanders from one entrance to the next and to an exit, to an entrance of different faculty buildings of a campus, a university campus in Amsterdam. So the path can also show you around, and it can be a shaded path, like here, three-dimensional, actually really made by trees. Or it can also be, like we did in Milan, a fence, a necessary security fence that we don't like, because a security fence always looks like imprisoning someone or having an inside and a definite outside. And so we designed social fence, a fence where you can sit in on both sides so that you don't really know what is inside or outside.
Also corona-proof fence, but
a corona-proof
you can
fence.
sit from both sides on a certain distance. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, here you see the benches a bit. You can sit inside and outside and you can converse with one another and you don't have this discrimination of inside or outside. And we also reinvented the security fence in a project in Israel by actually really combining it. You need the fence because everything is dangerous and everyone can attack. Or this is a fence around a school area. That is also a pergola at the same time, or a berceau. So you hide the fence in a very green and beautifully scenting environment, which is also shading. So something that looks very unattractive usually can become very attractive. Our work, and so is yours, by the way, is very much connected to the material. So the hands-on, feeling, touching, manipulating, working with materials, whether they are natural materials, planting, soil, structures, elements that you need, or whether it's about plantings. But we also are advisors and designers of interior finishes. And this is, for instance, an interior finishing box that we sent to Qatar because of an interior we were doing there. So very carefully, coordinating floors, walls, ceilings, and treatments of facades and acoustic elements. And always looking for materials that are not meant for this, but that you could actually use for something. Like these are brushes. And I had a fantasy already in the Dutch embassy in Berlin that I wanted to make a wall out of brushes, because these brushes are, of course, three-dimensional, but they also scatter the sound. So they are also a very effective acoustic tool. And here you see it implemented in the Mercedes-Benz Museum in Stuttgart. And we implemented the brushes into a shiny background so that, in fact, there is no boundary, but you have the feeling that this space continues. And there's always movement because of passers-by and users in front. So getting to know materials and testing them and looking at them, smelling them and going to places to understand what you can do with them. And also always making models, scale models, or tests with sewing machines or collages or drawings, and then working towards reality, and needless to say that something is really made and installed. I think working with scale is very important in our work, from very small detail to large and distant. It has to be convincing, and it's very different if you see something in a dark space from far away or in a very light space from close by. Also testing about sustainability. How can you start using curtains also as an energy collector? We started to do this research, I don't know, 7 years ago or so. And to see how we can, if you have a large facade, a glazed facade in a warm, you don't need sun actually, you need light. Why don't you use that scale and that's opportunity to collect energy and to feed the building in some way or another? So we're all, of course, many fashion designers, many designers are doing research in this direction, but the difference for us is that it has to be really large scale, so that it has to fit into the architectural realm in which we work, and preferably outside and not inside. So manipulating things that are not meant to be the way that you usually see them is one of our fun parts, don't you think? It's just fun, you know, to make a cushion of grass and then to sit on it and enjoy it. Yeah, many different gardens are a bit like interiors. They are so in such an urban condition, in such a harsh environment, but they are necessary, these green elements, because of water absorption and containment of water, so that water is not, flowing away at a few times that it rains in some parts of the world. They are hiding things, green and landscape. And of course, in the interior, you have that also, that materials can cover conditions that are not in themselves incredibly attractive. But these are exhaust chimneys from the parking below, enormous structures that we turned into green walls. Especially in Asia, but I think everywhere, the interior plant is getting more and more popular.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Do you have a green interior by now?
Not yet, but indeed it has it's and definitely also in the Chinese culture.
Yeah.
If you don't introduce it, they will introduce it in some other way. Yeah.
I think so too. But in Holland, at least, I'm not sure about Turkey, but if I see a younger generation, I visit them, then you come into a kind of rainforest before you reach the kitchen. It's unbelievable. Anyway, so we also need to make interior gardens, and maybe you also are familiar with that. You will get that more and more, especially also with this corona. People really feel they need healthy, you open the window, but you also need plants to clean your air and to keep you company, and to have something to take care of also. Anyway, we also designed the roof garden of Shenzhen, and that also looks more like an interior. It's based on a medieval recipe for decoration. That's actually where I got it from, in a very old book showing architecture decoration techniques and ideas. And because we wanted to combine European with Chinese culture, and we thought this also reminded you of paper cuts and so on, we designed the whole roof garden as a kind of decoration. But instead of being a carpet, it becomes a garden. So all the shapes are in fact shrubs and grasses that are trimmed in the shape, which they are very good at in China, to trim everything to shape. And so, whether it's landscape, you can see things as carpets, even a planting plan around a house in the Hudson Valley, north of New York, is more because they live in a kind of wild environment, a real big forest. And we wanted around the house to create a kind of intimacy and a place where the play and the children and everything is going on, and where you can cut flowers for inside. And also this project in Qatar, in Doha, is actually a garden on top of the roof of a parking lot. Yeah, you can't call it nature, right? It's a collection of desert plants in each planter in a certain composition. So it's more a collection of plants that are native and that represent the culture of Qatar. And it's a kind of laboratory for the universities there to work in. So it's a bit like furniture. Each planter is a piece, and it's carefully designed in all their details, the corner details, the top, and where the lighting comes. These white strips are lamps, lights, but also, the garbage can is integrated. The exhaust and air intake for the parking underneath are integrated. So it's a real piece of furniture, and at the same time, it's very technically designed in the interior to have a good moisture, water, earth, household, soil composition, and so on, to house these, what are actually wild plants. Yeah, then if you talk about the emancipation of the curtain, you also think of not only escaping the architecture, but also maybe integrating architecture or structure inside your curtain. Why not? And we had a chance to do that sometimes, you know, in a very classic form or in a less classic form, that you make a curtain or a piece of cloth so three-dimensional that it becomes a structure in itself. Yeah, and it's always interesting to look what happens through time, because naturally it catches, here you have again a test with the sun cells.
Yeah,
Sun cells.
yeah, there are.
And you see the copper thread, this is all knitted, and the copper thread that transports the energy, the plus and the minus transportation of energy are these copper threads or yarns that are knitted with the whole curtain. So technique, I'm sure that's with interior architecture as well. You have to understand all the technique to be able to be free to escape traditional idea about your profession, don't you think?
Yeah.
If you don't, it's like a painter having to copy endlessly all the masters before you can become an abstract painter or something. You have to just understand all the professions. And I think part of the pleasure we have is to get to know all these professionals and to visit the factory, to visit the printer, to see how the translation goes from making a little model to actually making it a computer program, then translating it into
There's all the phases and
all the phases,
and the professionals involved again. So for every phase you have another type of speciality or focus or detail that you have to take care of.
Whether it's a carpenter or an engineer or so. Yeah. So that was my introduction. Are you all still okay? Shall we ask? Are you still okay? I'm going to drink something.
We're 60. Yes.
Yes, that's
okay.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah, you hear us well, huh?
Yeah.
I'm talking very loud because of this mask.
Yeah, it's really hard.
I think one of the nice projects we did, which we want to tell, is I think it was 2014 or
4.
2004.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I knew there was a 4.
Yeah.
During the Arts Biennale, can't be, that is altijd een oneven. Anyway, Arts Biennale in Venice, we were invited by a curator called Francesco Bonami, Italian curator, to become one of the artists that designed a pavilion for the garden of Villa Manin. Villa Manin is this beautiful building, and Francesco Bonami made an exhibition there with Caspar Koenig's collection. And outside, of course, there's this beautiful garden, and they wanted to create these artistic pavilions, so that kind of sculptures that you move through the garden and also have experiences. And we said, well, we are not sculptors nor architects, and we are about movement and flexibility. So we created a personal pavilion, 57 of them, because we had 60, but 3 of them were damaged. Wearable pavilions in the form of a parasol, a small parasol. We bought 60 of them and took off the original cover and exchanged it for a silver foil. And the silver foil was also perforated so that you had organized views. In themselves, the foil is translucent. It's like a sunglasses, but then over your head, so it protects against the sun. But you have these viewpoints where you look into the sky. And we also designed, or we had made these circular stainless steel plates with big pins underneath that we put into the landscape. So they were like water drops almost that led you through the space. Here's our production line in our studio. And here you see how people take them and walk with them through nature. And they are protected, but they are also almost invisible because it reflects from the top, it reflects the sky, and from underneath it reflects the ground. And these openings create beautiful sunspots on the bodies. So you have a very many unexpected effects, in fact. Yeah, and these mirroring plates in the forest were unbelievable because they create a kind of sixth dimension. The trees are all of a sudden growing downward, the sky is underneath, etc. And yeah, that was nice. Then we worked on the villa in Bordeaux with 2011, 2012 was that was the redesign data. It was much earlier in the beginning, where I was asked to join the team of OMA, but also Maarten van Sevelen, the Belgian designer, and Vincent de Rijk, a model maker who works a lot with resins, acryl and resins, to influence the exterior, which was a kind of wilderness, to create a kind of garden atmosphere around the future villa, but also to work on the interiors. So this is the house. And yeah, these were all designed because this was like a forgotten forest on top of a hill. We couldn't even enter it. So we had to build literally inside this forest a scaffolding to climb on top of the scaffolding to see where we were. And Bordeaux city was down there, the river was underneath. This is on a higher point looking out. So we had to really open up the forest to create the opening for the house. And we made, again, as usual, first the track composition to understand the movement and the necessity of protection from sun or light or privacy, etc. And I also thought it would be interesting to have a track that moves from outside inside and from inside outside, literally, but also to make a double track so that you could not only hang curtains, but also art pieces. So you would have in this very modern house 2 layers. One would be textile and one could be paintings or drawings or something else. And these 2 tracks move outward, as I said, and so that your curtain and your art can go outside. Then this is the bathroom and the balcony. And in 2012, the owner asked us after 12 years, I think, to redo a lot of things. I think you will have that also in interior architecture. You're not done when it's installed. In gardens, it's even more intense, of course. Everything starts once you have installed it. Then the whole thing is a beginning. In interior, often with these kind of materials, they are bound to wear and tear, and so you have to always go back to it, or the people change, of course. So here, I think color and structures are really important. It's always in a dialogue with the architecture, needless to say. And maybe you remember the story that when Rem Koolhaas and OMA got the commission for this house, the couple and their children lived in the city and were moving here. And soon after the first talks, the owner had a car accident and became paralyzed. And so he lived on a wheelchair. And so what OMA designed here was this square So not a little elevator, but a whole room that a plate that moves vertically through the entire house. And the owner also asked for a very complex house. So not a house for necessarily for a handicapped person with one floor, but a really complex house, because he knew that he was going to live there and wanted to have a lot of independence and experiences. Anyway, so this platform is there, and so the carpet, of course, continues over the platform and moves with the platform up and down. Here you see a bit how this curtain works. This is a new curtain, more present, because the lady living there, the owner, becomes a bit, moves through the years and wants a bit more protection. And so we created this curtain that, kind of contradicts the architecture or enhances the architecture, complements the architecture, has a dialogue with the architecture, and is something that is completely manipulated by hand. We have outside curtains. So the white one comes out from inside, but this is an exterior curtain, which is actually a mosquito net that protects against mosquitoes at night. And then inside we have a lot of different
experiments.
Experiments.
Yeah, really experiments.
Yeah.
How to stop the light in a bedroom in a different way.
Exactly. They're all darkening so that people can sleep. But of course, when the sun rises, something happens. And that's maybe our obsession of not closing off too much. And there are always little slits and things happening. And choosing materials such as this lacquer plastic, which reflects light and movement, makes it a lively environment. Well, maybe you tell something. I'm taking a pause. I'm taking a break.
Well, with Casa de Música, it's a really interesting project in the sense that if you visit Porto, still till the day of today, Porto has a certain scale, a certain color, and this project, this cultural space, really central in the city, has really a scale of its own that connects with the city through its surrounding landscape somehow. So it is indeed as if it's landed in this place, but the whole landscape around it, this travertine, fluid plaza, really connects and opens up and has openings for parking, but also really, it's like a base, like a blanket above the area. And this is something that we also were part of in this project. Petra and the team was really part of the whole concept of how to deal with it together with OMA. It's a really collaboration. And I think it's also really nice to say that inside outside, and I think that's a privilege, indeed something really interesting that we've had the chance to really get involved in projects in a really early stage. So it's not we don't come as a landscape architect at the end of the project once it's done, or as with the interior once it's finished, but really we're part of the whole think tank of such a project, and that creates more dimensions and exciting moments. And this was actually recently, a few years ago, when we visited. This is a project from 2004, but you see it's actually how it's used, even in a rainy, gray day. This surface with its movement and different heights, it reflects the sky in a different way. It's a really exciting space. And here we are inside of Casa de Música, and you see that we also gave advisory on the materiality, how the shine of it and how to go about it, and also in this beautiful big theater in this auditorium, we also looked at the wall, these wooden walls. Can we have another layer on it that reflects light in a subtle way, but it's present when you see it at a certain light, but also really subtle, subdued. Really subdued. Yeah.
In fact, I thought, when OMA had this wooden box, and we were asked to create curtains for the glass facades, which are on two sides. I thought it was very sober. Huh? I mean, it's beautiful wooden box, but then what? And with the curtains, well, you see later, they refer to the Catholic mentality, the culture, the Catholic culture in Porto. This golden, actually enlargement of the wood grain. It's real gold leaf, but put on a very simple base material. And so that combination, giving it a festivity, but also a bit of connection to the Catholic Church, where gold and white and blue and so are often used. So this connection is then also made.
Yeah, and I think also the play, this facade, but with a kind of a lower area where it's perforated and it's shiny, velour. Chairs, the whole play. It's a really a play of a combination that's almost like a collage when you would study it, and it's actually magical to see that how it really works.
Because the chairs are by Maite van Zeven.
Yeah.
And with a beautiful arm with light in it.
Yeah.
But it was supposed to. It's an aluminum floor, so the floor and the chairs were supposed to become one landscape, and that's why the materialization was very important. And then to use all the local knowledge.
And experimenting. It's here also experimenting with different materials like this sound insulation foam that is normally not exposed, left like this. Is this for something together definitely with OMA, but it's also the play of daring to introduce this in a public space. These are quite recent pictures. You see a bit of a detail how the light's integrated in a certain grid, like how a minimal door is being placed. These are all things that also inspires the whole team throughout the years how to go about existing materials. It's actually it's almost a ready-made that you place in a different way.
Yeah, so these kind of tiles in Portugal, but in Porto are very much used, sometimes also outside, but in the interior of a station, a railway station, etc. So they're just replaced in this very modern context. So in the end, we made about 11 curtains because the architects, and that's a position we created, architects can make very transparent facades, even in a concert hall, trusting that inside-outside will come. We had that with Sejima and Nishizawa, with Sana as well, that inside-outside will come to solve some of the issues, such as darkness and acoustics and filters, etc. So, we created this view filter out of knotted torn voile, and it's knotted into a fishnet. And the importance at the time was that it would have no acoustic effect. So you create a curtain for a concert hall that needs to have zero acoustic effect. So that was a very scientific measuring how much volume and how much weight you could have. I'm not sure it was zero. I can't believe that, but it's minimal, in fact. And so this is what I meant. This is actually referring to the Catholic culture that women wear white lace over their hair in church when they are not married, and black lace when they are married. I've never understood why this is, but this is how it is. And so one side is a white curtain and the other side is a black curtain. And it's actually not a curtain, it's more like a wall. And it's pulled up into the ceiling. Yeah. And this is the black curtain. And you see that the glass facade by OMA is more a curtain than our curtains. So we exchange roles in a way. Mm-hmm. And then they needed a darkening layer as well. And we used the working drawings of the knotted curtain as the decoration of these backside, and the backside, I call it that, it's actually not, because through the window of the building you see from the city. So when you're outside, you look through the facade and you see this curtain. And here's a combination in the sunlight. Another space, another curtain.
In the same building.
Yeah,
Another
same
one.
building in the second auditorium. Maybe we should go a bit quicker,
Yeah.
Aura.
How are you doing? Because in it, our hosts are. How do you think we could continue with one more project, or?
How many projects do you want to see?
Because I know that you planned 1 hour, and that's almost
done. Yeah.
So if you're tired, so we can finish. But so if you feel well, we can continue. It's up to you.
Yeah.
We always feel well.
Yeah, so we can continue.
We can continue
Yeah,
for
sure.
days, you know. We have so many stories to tell.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, definitely. And
Yeah, maybe we try to do this quick,
yeah,
but how to do it quick? That's the question. Okay, we're now in Qatar, in the Middle East. It's hot.
in Doha.
Not always hot. Sometimes it's quite okay, but we've worked there for years because we worked on these two buildings with OMA. One is the National Qatar Library, and the other one is the Qatar Foundation headquarters. Sometimes we worked at 50 degrees Celsius. For us, that's a lot. And outside with helmets and jackets and boots, quite amazing. Inside, it's always very cool. So you can always escape inward. Here in Holland, we escape outward, and there we escape inward, right? We were asked to do the landscape of both projects, to design the landscape, to realize it, and to make some of the curtains, actually most of the curtains. But this process, as Aura said, often starts in a very early conceptual stage when OMA is still thinking about, or any architect is thinking about the concept of a building. And in that very early stage, they showed how the auditorium was actually a fold out of a bridge that flies through this very open library space. So you have an extra floor, but it's not a real covering floor, but a bridge. And that bridge is cut out and folded down, and that is what makes the seats of the auditorium. Mm-hmm. And so at the time, I thought it would be nice to create a curtain that follows that
shape, actually,
the diagonal.
Yeah.
And so it was decided to make a steel structure, and that was all thought out by the architects and engineers that would be connected to the columns in a very ingenious manner and would follow that, hoe zeg je dat nou? Die schuinte.
Yeah, the angle, actually.
The angle,
the angle, yeah.
Exactly. That's the word that I was looking for. So it followed the angle. And okay, so that was made. And then I thought 10 years later, or 7 years later, when we finally got the arts commission, we were part of a kind of competition, which we won. When we were asked to make the curtain, I thought, we are so stupid. I'm so stupid that I thought of this curtain in a diagonal position, because a textile really needs gravity and hangs straight down. And if you hang it from like this, it will behave really not very beautifully. So we had to find a solution, and we did a lot of tests. And then with the textile museum in Tilburg, we developed a cloth that in itself shifts. So the yarns, in a vertical way, the yarns are so slippery that they shift in themselves. So if they hang horizontally, they are like this, but if you hang them diagonally, the yarns shift in relation to one another. So that was a kind of engineering within the cloth. So if you have shifting, very slippery yarns in the vertical direction, you need to, of course, connect them in the horizontal connection. So indeed, like weaving, and it is weaving, you have a yarn that connects and stabilizes, and you have a yarn that wants to move. And so to find that equilibrium in a cloth was actually the whole
4 years, no?
It took years, yeah, because you have to, here you see what
Really
we
well,
did.
yeah.
You see that there is this very loose weave, and you see a very stable, what we called ribs
Structure, huh?
where the same yarn and the same composition of yarns is woven very tightly. So these ribs, these ribs are stabilizing, and these ribs are also doing something. They are helping the direction of the shift in a certain position. Here you see also a bit, this is very tight, and this is very loose. And these are obviously the slippery ones, and these are obviously the not slippery ones. And no, we're not even talking about the design, but there was a whole process about the design, because you are in a culture which does not want anything that really is a realistic representation of anything. So we were talking about language and about poetry and about symbols. But all of these things the clients would not accept until we came with this very abstract idea to represent the starry skies of the desert. But then in what I call the Dutch way, in other words, very linear, in a very linear manner. And so the curtain represents the desert skies and the hilal. Yeah, what is it? Anyway. And in a technique which we call Jacquard Weave, which you probably also know very well, you weave with positive and negative. So you can weave with two colors or one color, whatever, but you can have a double effect. So you don't have a front and a back, but you have what is black here is white on the other side, what is white on the other side is black on this side. So what you just saw here, on one side has one color and the other. But what we did here was even more inventive. This has 3 layers. So there are hidden yarns that you don't see. And that effect that is then created is that one side could be black, dark blue, and the other side could be completely white. So here's the drawing. And that's why I said in the beginning, I'm such a fool to think of a diagonal situation, because this is what you get. You get a composition of shapes that together form a quasi-innocent curtain. And then we discovered, okay, we have a good weave, we have good yarn, we have a basic design idea, but if you hang it in space, it's so large, it looked a bit dumb. It looked a bit like as if it was a design for a shirt or something. It needed to have a large scale addition to it. And as we visited the Islamic Museum, we discovered these astronauts. Huh? Yeah, astronauts. Heet het zo?
Yeah, so indeed.
Yeah, astronauts. They are measures of the stars, so that in old times at sea or on land, you can find your way. And they were so beautiful. So I took these pictures and we redrew them, and they became the design that the big scale that was introduced into this curtain. These are all models, also to convince the architects, but also the client of this idea. So scale models are incredibly important. Then you need to translate your ideas into, of course, computer drawings, But our computer drawings are not the same as the weaving machine computers. So that translation is very important to follow at the millimeter, because you can make mistakes. And I'm sure there are a few things that are not completely following the plan, but nobody sees it. And here you have the widths of the woven textiles. They need to be stretched and treated for fire retardants, then packed, and then sent to the seamstresses, because you have rolls and rolls and rolls of textile, but you don't have a curtain yet. They need to be connected to one another. And how do you connect them to one another? Because you don't want to stiffen it, because the whole point is to keep it shifting in diagonal position and in horizontal position whenever needed. So the seams have to be very, very flexible and very open. This is a test hanging in the building, because we also needed to make emergency exits. So there are real openings like doors. And here we are at the production company where they really make the textile into curtains. And here we do the last tests to see if everything is okay, if there are no mistakes. And here it is hung. And we are hanging it ourselves with lots of people, because you understand these curtains are very, very, very heavy, and they're large and heavy and slippery. Thank God. And they need to have an organized pleat. So you have to connect each carrier with the other to have a pleat. And men are very good seamstresses, of course, and it's all seamed on site. So the bottom is done on site, cut and sewn on site, which was an adventure in itself, needless to say, because of the slipperiness of all the yarns. And here it's done. And used. And if you look out, a very young design is starting to grow its life. Okay, I give you to Aura.
Yeah, well, indeed, when an interesting project that came along to Petra from a client that was already involved in other projects with us, he said, I have this old former hospital in Charlottenburg in Berlin that I would like to transform into housing. And he asked us to make his own private house on the top, on the attic of this building. It's from 1910, something like that. And he asked us, like, could you do something for me? But I'm in love with that space. It's really in the central area, completely at the top of actually a whole, besides the hospital, there were also plans to make new housing buildings around it. So he really wanted a view over the entire area, and you can see an enormous scale of the building and a really classical type of building where we were asked to do something at completely at the top. This is the actual situation of and the aesthetics of the space. And what was interesting to understand indeed that the attic of such a space, and you can imagine it's in central attic, so it's around 500 square meters. And he said, I want to keep it like this. Actually, I love it how it is, but I want to live in there. So for us, it was a chance like, well, that's perfect. So that means there's an outside inside of a roof, under a roof, and you want an interior, but you also want it to be outside. So we started to experiment and think of what shall we do? What can we introduce in that space? Could we make a house within the house that is some way protected and that we can leave the space around untouched? So these are part of the testing and experiments. Actually, during the process, we started also to do scale studies. I think it's also something really interesting for all students to always keep on doing scale studies, because in this case, we were thinking already of a glass house or something transparent to allow the view towards the attic surrounding it. So we started with some different studies, and actually by accident, we placed the glass house, a famous glass house pavilion from Philip Johnson. We placed it inside of the attic with the surrounding landscape in it. And actually the clients completely really liked the idea. Said, well, this is, I really see something like this happening in this space. So it was a first intuition that we actually really started to build. So here you see the idea that there is a glass house that is warm, is heated with a floor heating, totally out of glass, and then with a cold landscape inside of the attic surrounding it. We could turn to a garden. On one side, a balcony towards the north, and also in a cupola space, in a small, really nice space within the building. We also thought, well, the bedroom could have its own private area, so you could actually, you should actually go through the garden towards your bedroom, and we thought it's a romantic idea, and the client supported it. So, but besides, of course, cutting within the structure, something that we needed to do is also how to bring light. If we make a garden, we need to open it up somehow, and also the heat has to go out in the summer, but also light has to come in. So we started to collaborate with engineers. Here you also see a study of first of all, to get a grip on the whole attic, we needed to make models to understand which beams are carrying, where can we cut, what can we do. So this is a part of the process. And you see a visualization where we say, okay, there's a glass house, there's also a roof, and that roof should also be accessible to be able to even get closer to this space. Yeah, and we have indeed ridges of really, we're talking about 25 meters high and 18 meters high, so it's an enormous space, and creating these illusions of, well, a house with a structure surrounded by a garden and a balcony. That's what you see. And to get to realization, indeed, we started to collaborate with engineers, but this is with something we did in-house, how to go through it, all the details, how to be able to cut through the building in Germany, respecting all the regulations. It's on top of the building, so a really important space as well for the rest of the space of the living areas down beneath. So these are actually visualizations that done by Arab engineers, explaining and checking how we could do these incisions, and also a study on the skylights in the roof. What is possible? How far can we go? How far can we go structural wise, but also for the municipality? What is acceptable for municipality in this area? So here you see already during construction that we're opening up and light is entering the space, and also creating new views that I think that's really something that's really interesting about designing and experimenting and being able to dare to make such a big gesture, is that always something unexpected comes along with it. So also the client had never seen this of course this tower from this view and the light that comes in, so suddenly new openings are there, and at the moment we're actually trying to finish the house. It's kind of course quite minimal because the area is so rustic around it that inside it should be completely like white, minimal, and really straight. So here you see where we are at now. It's a structure already standing, a glass house surrounding it, and now we hope to be able to in the coming time to get it along. So this is an architectural project that is interior but also landscape, and actually both things come together in a certain way. Yeah.
Maybe we should stop here because we see that a lot of people are moving out, and it's we have another exhibition that we designed, and things like that, but and another project which is a restoration project. But in fact, this, what Aura was just showing, is for us very exciting because it's the first time, and that's because Aura joined the team, I suppose, but it's the first time we actually do architecture, which we never did before. So it's more in your street. I think it's really supposed to be interior architecture. I mean,
Yeah.
anything else I can't call it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
I think this is yeah.
Yeah. Say, Danielle, they want to
Let's escape because I think people are getting restless.
Thank you very much. This was quite impressive. I missed the beginning, unfortunately, but the parts that I caught up were amazing. And even just the design you talked about regarding the Qatar experience, that curtain design, taking us through all the stages, it was just amazing. I would have never imagined how complicated the whole thing was. But when you explain it step by step, yes, yeah, how are you going to hang things on a slope is a true problem. And you have developed an amazing problem. So thank you for presenting your ideas. I really don't necessarily have a question. I just wanted to thank you. And I also want to thank our interior design department for bringing you to us. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any questions?
I could ask a question.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Chara. Thank you for the beautiful presentation, by the way. The materials you used are...
We can't see you. We can't see you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Is that on purpose or?
I mean, I wasn't intending on it, but I can.
Yes.
Hi.
See you. Hi.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello. Like the materials you used were like in terms of fabric wise, like very normal. They were very normal, but designed in such extraordinary ways in terms of textures, uses, shapes and such. How do you even start the design process of those with these kinds of materials and end up where you end up, like from the beginning, the very beginning, like the mock-ups, sketches?
Yeah. That's how you start. The way you start imagining where you are and who's going to use it, and yeah, look at the cultural context as well. And I think
some research.
Yeah, definitely research, definitely conversations. We sometimes are asked much later in the process when the building is almost done, which is always a bit more difficult, but then we do the same kind of research. We ask a lot of questions to the architects and the clients, etc. And I think what you do is start with models and drawings.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
And then see what material fits it. And sometimes it has to be plastic, and sometimes it has to be velvet, or it's just fantasizing and trying out and ping-ponging in the team.
Yeah, yeah, and also thinking it's something that we actually also like to bring an unexpected textile into a space. So, for example, use truck plastic, a plastic that's used for trucks, or a bubble wrapping material that you will never use, make it for a curtain. We dare sometimes also to say, well, what would happen if we use something that has never been used before in a curtain or in a facade?
That's actually the essence how it all began. We started
lots of trial and error.
Huh? Trial and error.
Yeah,
yes.
definitely a lot of trial and error. Yeah. Many. Well, we must say we try to keep to just only. We tell the clients, well, we will show 3 options, but internally we do 50. So we're never really satisfied easily, indeed. And I think making options in different scenarios, that's also a way of.
Well, here you see, we used wrap plastic from the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And for a curtain in New York, we used scaffolding material and plastic out of agriculture to make a huge curtain that was hanging in the city. So it's trial and error, but also daring to improvise.
And could I maybe ask a more like philosophical question in terms of designing? Like, what would be your biggest suggestion to like designers like us, like up and coming designers who haven't mastered the design processes or like anything yet, still learning people, like if you could just ask yourself, not ask yourself, tell yourself, but like 30 years younger, what would you say to yourself?
I would say the most important is to dare to make mistakes, to not be ashamed of making stupid proposals to start with, because that's how it goes. And so if you're a perfectionist, I think I can call myself perfectionist. It's very difficult because you want to always sketch or draw immediately something worthwhile. And I really learned through trial and error to let go of that. Also let go of the ego, not completely, because of course designing is about, I mean, it's also about ego. You want to make something that makes people happy or that functions well, but to let go in the sense that you accept teamwork, at least for me and maybe also for you. Teamwork is part of the fun. You know, if you sit alone in your little island and try to get everything solved, it's much more free to work together with people who all have their different intelligence and different talent.
Yeah.
And together you have more intelligence than on your own. And the other thing is that has to do with it is curiosity, a perpetual curiosity and a kind of, you know, wow, this is interesting. Wow, this I want to see. And I think philosophically, I think it's very important, and I'm sure Aura and Jana agree, is that you read a lot and that you see a lot and that you don't forget that everything is connected, not only nature and human, but also all the art forms, literature, poetry, film, music, sports, you know, whatever, but you know, that you feed yourself with culture, different cultures. I don't know, but I think because while reading and while looking, you also can relax and let go of yourself or what you're doing, and then you subconsciously get influenced and inspired. And that relaxation is very difficult if you're young. But I think I have a hardworking husband who always says, I learned most by doing nothing.
Yeah. And in the office, for example, we work 4 days because we think that the 5th day of the week, people should do something else. They should go to a museum or go to nature or to sports or besides. So that's also part of our philosophy.
Children, cooking, gardening.
Cook for your children if it's
But no, you're not there yet. But
yeah.
But is that something? And what I also always think is that writing language is very important. So the way you describe what your work is about or what you want to make or what you are actually showing, I think language is very important.
Sometimes the presentation is nearly as important as the actual product.
Well, it's a beginning.
So, but language is
and also a confrontation with yourself. Like how, if I put this sketch or this idea into words, how would I describe it?
Yeah.
Am I covering almost everything, dear teachers?
You have to,
I mean, you certainly covered what I was wondering.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Good. Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
I would like to ask a question as well. I am Ahmet Sezgin, the head of the interior design department. Thanks a lot for this brilliant presentation. I really admire the character of your work and the meticulous details in them. And like Çağrı, while looking at your works, I thought you exploited the potential of the material so masterfully. And in many ways, the outcomes are so unconventional. So what I was wondering was, how has been the reception of it, for instance, these unconventional uses of fabric by the occupants? Have you been informed of any unintended uses of them, or do your clients now begin to approach you with new ideas derived from your previous designs?
What is the process?
Yeah. So indeed, if your clients already are influenced by what you've seen of your work, or if they come blank and are they also open?
You're asking about the clients.
Yeah.
Well, some are, and some even go so far that they say, "Oh, you've done that and that. We want that. We want exactly that." And then we say, no, that's not possible. We are site-specific creators or designers, architects. So, but it's very different to work in public buildings or in private circumstances. In private circumstances, you can do whatever you like, of course, in collaboration with the users and the people living there. But in public spaces, you have to do a lot of safety and security, whether it's landscape or interior architecture or an object in the interior. It has to answer to fire retardants, to durability, to cleaning, etc. And therefore, you are much more encased in regulations. And in that sense, it's very, that's why some materials are very classic materials, that people know very well and that the performance of very well, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's different with each project, in fact. And we try to introduce, as you asked, I think, new materials and new inventions, or taking them out of context and putting them inside. But they have to answer to all these regulations nevertheless.
Yeah. And I think indeed the people that approach us, clients that approach us, they are aware that they're getting something special in a way. It is going to be an unicum. It's going to be, I think they're aware that in the office, all our projects are at the front line. We don't have a project and a B project that we do aside. They're all, we treat them equally as important. And I think that's something that I think they can see it from the work that we've done. It's like, well, there's a certain professionalism, but also a certain artistic quality that they expect, and also a perfectionism that they know that we will never be easily, let's say, satisfied. So they come already with those expectations.
Yeah, I think so. But what did I want to say? Something about, maybe also, as you know from experience, that you have so many limitations, in a way, in public projects, that it's like a puzzle. Huh? It's like a contradictions of necessities. You want something here, but it should also do that, and it should not do that, and people should not fall over it, and so it's always a real challenge to get all the pieces together.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not sure we answered your question, did we?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah. Right. But I think the way of working is definitely not commercial, in the sense that people have, that's why it's so nice if we have the time to explain a project like the curtain in Qatar, because it takes years, and it's unaffordable. I mean, if we would count all the hours that and I'm saying this also to the students, you either are a commercial architect or you are a creator. And that's really a choice, because if you are a creator, you are working and thinking and inventing the wheel again and again and again. and you'll never get rich. We are still not rich.
No,
It's terrible.
that's not the goal. That's not the goal.
No.
But
Not
it's,
for our lives.
I assume it should be a wonderful feeling to see that. That's what I understood from in your answer to the question, that your clients recognize that what you are trying to do, that you really want to be that creative. You want to be in that creative field. So that should be wonderful, I assume.
Yeah.
That's wonderful, but at the same time, we really are obsessed by being technical as well. You know, it's not a girl's job. It's very technical and very mathematic and very strategic. So I think, there's a lot to it, which keeps it, makes it interesting.
Well, then also thank you for not doing a typical girl's job. Thanks for delving into such a challenge. We appreciate it.
Good. Okay.
Wow.
Well, it was nice meeting
Yes.
the ones we could see, and it
Yeah.
was very mysterious to meet everyone invisible.
Yeah. Hopefully, in real life, at a certain.
Well, can I say something?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Well, it's not a question, but I also want to tell directly to you. Thank you very much for inspiring presentation. I really inspired most of the details. Thank you. So have a nice life,
Yeah.
let's say. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, good luck. Yeah. Good luck with your future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Thank you for inviting
Yes.
us.
Thank you very much.
Next time. Thank you for all the
Hope to
organization.
see you in real life
Yeah.
one day.
Yeah, hope to see you, of course. So we were expecting you to host you in the physical world, but
Yes.
so sorry for it.
No,
Yeah.
it's okay.
Force majeure.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.